Welcome to the Borderless Podcast, your guide to traveling, investing, and living beyond borders, where we talk about living the life that you want to live, where you want to live it. From beautiful San Miguel de Allende, smack in the middle of Mexico, with your hosts, Jonathan Lockwood and James Guzman.
Welcome to the Borderless Podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders. If you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, maybe it's because you need to go borderless. And this is your podcast. My name's Jonathan Lockwood. I'm here with James Guzman. How you doing, James?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Good. What's the latest from Chile?
Well, everything's fine. You know, the weather's great down here. It's still the summertime. Lots of interesting things going on as far as entrepreneurship. I'm learning a lot about the funds that they have down here to try to attract foreign people here, foreign companies to move here, and also people that have ideas to try to move their businesses down here. So kind of figuring out the ins and outs of that, and it's pretty interesting.
That's great. I know Chile is a great possibility for people who are interested in being an entrepreneur. They seem to actually respect entrepreneurs, generally speaking, there.
Well, yeah, and they're trying to attract people, that want to do this type of thing from other countries. So it's kind of a reverse brain drain is what they're trying to create here. So I'm going to get some more kind of details of all the information. I'll definitely be putting some stuff out on the blog about that. So
okay, cool. So our guest this week on the Borderless Podcast is Gregory Diehl. He's a personal coach and educator who learned the art and science of compelling communication through a decade of full-time international travel, living and working with the people of over 30 different societies on Earth. His passion for helping others accumulate self-knowledge and communicate their value led him to the field of identity development for individuals and brands. Gregory's global experiences have given him a unique perspective on the narratives of human life and the role of businesses in society. He now coaches individually and in groups to help others uncover their core values and design lifestyles in line with them. He currently spends most of his time finding new parts of the world to explore when not shifting between semi-permanent bases in Georgia and Armenia. He's also developing a personal lifestyle sanctuary in Vilcabamba, Ecuador, where he plans to rear independent children and rescue hungry cats. Welcome, Gregory Diehl, to the Borderless Podcast.
Wonderful to be here with both of you guys.
And today, you are in one of those semi-permanent bases in Georgia, correct?
That's correct. I'm currently in Tbilisi, Georgia.
All right. Very good. And so, Gregory, why don't we take just a minute here and tell us where you're from, what your background is, and what led you to this?
I'm originally from San Diego, California, which is where I spent the first 18 years of my life, unfortunately. And immediately after finishing high school and reaching legal adulthood, I began a journey of endless exploration of both myself and the world around me, which I previously had only a very small, limited perspective on. And it became my mission to expand that as quickly as possible. And in doing so, I learned a lot about how people think. I worked a lot in education of children of all ages, ranging from nursery school all the way up to university level. And I worked with a lot of businesses in a variety of capacities in sales and marketing and coaching and training, writing, and all forms of communication that a business participates in. And all of this has sort of turned into an ongoing passion I have now for helping people figure out who they are and the kind of lives they want to be living. And also, by extension, businesses and brands figure out what they're trying to stand for, what kind of value they're trying to produce in the world, and the best way they can communicate that to their core audience.
Very well done. Thank you, Gregory. That was very well spoken. James and I met you, I think about a year and a half ago, something like that, when you were cruising through San Miguel, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Right. And you were just on one of your many journeys, and I think you hung out here for a few weeks, and we got to know you a little bit. And then, we became Facebook friends, and I started seeing all of your travels. And where have you been in the last year, for instance? Just run them down.
Oh, the last year, I'd have to search my memory a bit because it's been at least a dozen places. But I think about a year ago, I was in Spain. From there, I hopped around to the UK, hitting all of the, I don't know if they're all considered different countries or not, but I hit England, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales. From there, I went to Malaysia for several months, and I hopped down to Singapore, Bali, and from there off to Sri Lanka, Dubai, Oman, and now currently Georgia, and I'll probably be heading to both Germany and Estonia in the next couple of months.
Right. And you had a pretty bad experience here recently that we want to get into a little bit later, but I thought we could take some time to really jump into Georgia here. And when we talk about Georgia, just to be clear, we are not talking about the state within the United States. We're talking about the country in Eastern Europe. And there's been a lot of positive discussion about Georgia as a potential place for people to expatriate. There are some great pros about it, and I know that you've decided to sort of pursue residency there, right?
Yeah, that's both for practical and technical reasons. It's actually a really nice place to hang out, and I say that having seen a lot of places and being very picky about where I like to spend my time. And also, it's actually a fantastic place to get things done like banking and business and set up residency with the goal of eventually being naturalized.
All right. And why? What is it? What's so great about Georgia?
A lot of it is hard to put into words, but it's the kind of thing where you can get an enormous quality of life for very little money. And I've been to some of the poorest parts of the world, so I know there are plenty of places on this earth where you can live on a few $100s a month if you want to. But most of those places, you will not be very comfortable living that kind of budget. Georgia is the kind of place where it seems like it's just developed enough and so unknown that you're getting a first world quality of life, but everything is so cheap that you can live comfortably on $500 a month if you want to and still feel like you're living in a first world nation. Like, I don't have to worry about the internet shutting off. I don't have to worry about living in a rackety little shack or eating horrible quality street food. I really feel like I'm living a very comfortable existence here. Things tend to work very well. It's very easy to get things done here. And there aren't very many places like that I found on Earth so far. It's either one extreme or the other.
Wow, I don't know anything at all about Georgia. So what is it? I mean, what is it like there as far as things to do, geography-wise, that type of thing? What is life in general like there?
Well, I do plan to do some more exploring around the outskirts of the country starting this weekend. Luckily, I can get a shared taxi to just about anywhere in the country for a few dollars and be there within a few hours. But in Tbilisi, the capital, for example, there's a nice sort of, I don't want to say extroverted, but people are out and about a lot. There's a strong cafe culture. There are a lot of restaurants, a few shopping malls, not very developed, but it's the kind of place where you can very easily go out and talk to people as you go about your business throughout the day. But also, what I appreciate, as I'm sort of an introvert, is people don't go out of their way to get into your business. Like, people mostly keep to themselves unless you engage in conversation and start to get to know them. There are people of all ages here. It's very diverse. While not everyone speaks English, anyone in a professional field certainly will. So there have been a few times where I've struggled to communicate to a taxi driver exactly where I'm trying to go, but things like Google Maps help with that. But in general, I find it very easy to function here and to meet people and just sort of enjoy my life, although I'm not much of a party person or anything like that, so it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, certainly. But it's a surprising little gem that I think a lot of people don't really know about.
All right, so just so people can picture this, Georgia is south of Russia and just north of Turkey, Azerbaijan, and really not that far north of Iran. Is that correct?
It's just north of Armenia, actually.
Too. Yes, right. All right, very good. And so it's a pretty small country. Do we know what the population is there?
I couldn't say offhand. No, okay, I could look it up on Wikipedia if you want.
That's all right. But it seems like I've been hearing some really positive things about Georgia too, as far as it's not extremely difficult to get a bank account there. Is that correct?
It's the easiest I've ever seen, actually. It's the only place outside of my home country where I found where you can walk into, first of all, a pretty high quality bank that is known internationally. It's a place like TBC Bank with just your passport, and within several minutes have an account open. And, in comparison to, I have a couple accounts based in the US, both of which my debit card is constantly deactivated as I travel around the world because they have certain fraud measures that go off. No matter how many times I tell them I travel around the world, I'll be in these countries, if I even know the countries ahead of time where I'll be. And half the time I find I can't take money out of an ATM or make a purchase online as I travel. I haven't had that issue with my TBC card, for example. I've had no issue getting money in and out of my account.
Excellent. And what can we say about all of the things that go into what makes a country or the banks within a country safe, pros, anything to say about that? How is the country doing? I mean, is the country, insolvent?
Well, I wouldn't be an expert on political or economic matters in that regard, but I do believe that it is growing rather quickly. I'd have to look up the specific facts to tell you exactly why that's the case, but I get a sense of being here that industry is growing, entrepreneurs are being attracted here, and I feel like it's in a position where in the next decade or so, you're going to see a lot of economic growth in this part of the world. And I think that's supported by certain things that are happening right now politically. Like I know, for example, Georgia, there was a law that was just passed allowing Georgian citizens visa-free access to Europe now, to the rest of Europe, to the Schengen area. If you know, there's a visa policy that's shared among all the countries within the Schengen zone, like France and Italy and Spain. And so now Georgian citizens are getting 90 days visa-free access for every 6 months out of the year there, which is sort of a highly coveted quality to have as part of your passport. And it instantly makes being a citizen here and having a passport here much more valuable. I think things like that are indicative of things going in a very positive way for Georgia.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Have to definitely check that out. I wanted to ask you about is I see you, a lot of times when I see different groups and, they have pictures of different groups. I say like the Tropical MBA, for instance, and then, you'll always be there in the picture. All of a sudden I say, hey, there's Gregory,
Oh, that's right.
And so, I think that's pretty interesting. Of all the different groups that I know that you've been all over the world and you've met a lot of people that have to do with this digital nomad space. What would you say are kind of the different flavors of groups, and which ones have you enjoyed the best? And, for other people that might be thinking about going and venturing out and meeting some of these people.
Well, there's this really awful group called the Borderless Society, which I would just absolutely not recommend to anyone. It's run by those two psychos. Okay. But aside from them, you mentioned, Tropical MBA, which is Dan Andrews' group. He runs sort of his insider circle called the Dynamite Circle, which is a little bit all over the map. There are a lot of people all involved in varying levels of location-independent entrepreneurship, some seeming like complete newbies, others very experienced, very successful. And I would say I've learned quite a bit from the forums and some of the live events I've been to from them. But it's a very mixed bag, and I would certainly recommend it for the cost involved. I think it's about $50 a month to be part of it. There is a lot to be learned there and a lot of valuable connections to be made to other people. So if you're looking to learn how to make money online or the basics of growing a business, that's certainly worth checking out. And of course, Dan has his podcast and his blog, which are highly valuable. I spent an enormous amount of time working with Andrew Henderson's group, Nomad Capitalist, and what his group now, I believe he's calling it the Society, which is a much higher end group that is designed more for specific strategies towards growing your wealth or investing it in parts of the world that will see an enormous return, or protecting it with uncommon offshore strategies, or even lifestyle stuff related to residency and citizenship that most people don't know about. And so he's it's a very different caliber of individuals with a very different focus, and a lot of it does cover things like entrepreneurship, but it's much more sort of laser focused, heavy stuff. So it's certainly not for everyone, and certainly not everyone can afford it. But it's I would say those are the two main groups I've learned the most from. And, it really comes down to two things. One, of course, is the actual practical knowledge that you're learning. And as much as I've learned, both through firsthand experience in the life I've been living for the last almost 10 years, and what I've learned from people who have been much more successful than I have, a lot of it, too, is also about just personality, finding people that you feel like you can relate to as you live these kinds of unconventional lifestyles. And no two people who choose to live and invest and work around the world are going to be looking for the exact same things or living the exact same kinds of lifestyles. But very often we can feel so isolated from the rest of the world who live much more sedentary lifestyles. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it can be very supportive to be around people who sort of understand the uncommon choices you've made and the uncommon ambitions that you're pursuing. And the Borderless Society is one of those where I would highly recommend the people involved. I was joking before about what I said.
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, I think it's just, it's really interesting to look at these different groups. Like you said, we have the Borderless Society. We have the ones you also mentioned. I'm down here at Exosphere, which is kind of the different type of, but similar, but different types of personalities. So I think it's really interesting to watch how this all evolves. I think the internet is allowing us to all communicate with one another and reach out to people that we might have similarities with, although we're not, we haven't grown up together and stuff. So it's really interesting to see all the new groups that come out. So that's cool. And what about, I've never made it down to over there to like Vietnam and Bali and some of these places where I think the Dynamite Circle is mostly out of. How is it out there? I mean, it seems like you can just go and meet all kinds of people that are in kind of the digital nomad space. I mean, when you started out, you went out there, didn't you?
Southeast Asia is certainly probably the most popular hotspot for young, exciting, hip people who have realized that they can make a living online and want to go where they will have the greatest lifestyle freedom for a very affordable cost. My preference, and the first place I ever went, is actually Latin America, Central and South America. As I mentioned before, or as John mentioned, I own some property in Vilcabamba, Ecuador. That is also one of the few places where I feel comfortable putting down roots and considering a long-term future for myself. With everywhere I've been, there are very few places I can really say that. If you're looking for other people who are living the digital nomad lifestyle, though, places like Thailand, Bali, Kuala Lumpur, parts of the Philippines is where you will find a lot of these laptop warriors. I don't necessarily identify very strongly with a term like digital nomad because, while it is technically true that I make money online and I live a nomadic lifestyle, I just see myself more as an explorer of our planet who happens to carry his home with him in a suitcase, right? And a laptop and an internet connection are just tools for helping me stay connected to people, right? And I think the connotations that come with that kind of description are a little bit different than somebody who's living on the beach, drinking cocktails out of a coconut and avoiding all responsibilities in life, whereas some people might characterize them. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm really looking more for sort of an early retirement kind of mentality where, not in the sense where I stop making money, but just where I only do things I am highly passionate about, both for myself and for the impact they make on the world. And at the same time, have the opportunity to earn me a healthy monetary return.
Very good. And so, let's talk about that. You had mentioned to me, I was looking at Vilcabamba myself once you told me about it. It's in Ecuador. Where is it situated in Ecuador?
It's in the far south, below Loja and north of the Peruvian border.
Mm-hmm. And this is a colonial town, right?
It's, I know it's probably changed a fair amount in the last several years, but when I was there last a few years ago, it's a very interesting blend of both indigenous qualities and population and lifestyle, and a mix of expatriates from all over the world, which I found really intriguing and really rare in the world, where you're getting many different kinds of cultural identities all melting together, some derived locally and others derived from other parts of the world. I think there are only about 5,000 people living there. It's up in the mountains and the valleys, about 5,000 feet elevation. It's got year-round spring weather, which is wonderful for someone like me. I'm not a big fan of the cold, which unfortunately Georgia here just at the tail end of winter is a bit cold. It's manageable, but I would not want to be here in December. I saw it as the perfect opportunity to set up a lifestyle where I was in complete control of the values I hold and the things I will teach my future children and the kinds of relationships I want to form with people.
Great. Sounds ideal. So you mentioned in the biography I had on you, you talked about Vilcabamba, Ecuador, where you would like to kind of put down some roots. You mentioned being, semi-permanent places in both Georgia and also Armenia. That's because you have a connection to Armenia, don't you?
That's true. I am 1/4 Armenian. My grandmother was born there and left when she was very young as a result of the genocide that just happened to be going on there, which I guess isn't talked very much about in history books. But as a result of my own family history there, I ended up doing a fair amount of research on what happened there about 100 years ago. And just a few months ago, I made my first trip to Armenia, both to look up more my family ties there and to apply for citizenship by descent because I have that family connection. And it turned out pretty well. I'm still waiting to hear back about exactly when I can receive my Armenian passport, but I found the whole experience very thrilling. Armenia as a country, as a culture, it felt very old, very authentic. It felt like a huge amount of the country was very empty, like nobody had really updated it for modern times. Like it really feels like a place that was abandoned, and slowly things are starting to pick up again. People are starting to return. Economic activity is happening, but really outside of the capital, it's like if a ghost town were a country, in a sense. It's very beautiful. And there are churches and monasteries that are thousands of years old, but you get this eerie sense of the past there that I loved it. I mean, maybe I'm just a weirdo looking for very strange things in the kind of environment I choose to surround myself in. But aside from the fact that the internet speed was a little less reliable than someone like myself would prefer, I felt extremely comfortable there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that it's interesting about you, all the different ways that you've found to, fund your trips in your life. I mean, it's amazing all the things when you list all the things that you're doing. It's like a never-ending list of things, and it's kind of like rather than digital nomad, maybe we want to use the term, digital hustler or something. I think that somehow that might, purvey what I kind of do as well, trying to find different opportunities as you can. What are some of the ways that you have found to make money online or during your travels?
Well, it was very grab bag all over the place when I started. And, even since I was a teenager, I was very good at finding quick and dirty ways to make money in an ethical way. But I don't mean
you said dirty.
I mean, just sort of, pieced together with masking tape and paper clips. For a while, I became a music teacher when I was a teenager, for example, not because I had an insane passion for teaching music, but because I realized I knew how to play the guitar and I was pretty good at explaining how things worked. And I lived in Southern California where every soccer mom wanted their kid to learn 1 or 8 different instruments. So I was in the perfect environment for it. And I didn't realize at the time, but I was developing the principles of entrepreneurship and how to develop productized services and brand identities that would fit a specific niche opportunity in the marketplace. I just did what came naturally to me. I saw an opportunity. I saw somebody was willing to pay money, and I convinced them to give it to me, right? But it's learning to see things through the principle that I realized almost anywhere I go, either physically where I am in the world or all the opportunities I have to interact with people online, there are opportunities in the marketplace, people looking for very specific solutions, but there is no person or no business entity coming along to fill them. And it's either because they don't have the tools they need to provide that solution, or they just haven't presented a personality, a brand that comes across as somebody that they want to hire to help them with this problem. And that's now what I have learned to do a lot better for myself, to move away from that grab bag state of existence where I'm just hustling, closing deals, selling things left and right, finding different ways that I can help people and get them to give me money in return. And instead building a system and a consistent message, a consistent story that will help me really solidify my identity in the world. And that part of that identity is helping other people do the exact same thing, because the same problems I've been having, where I've been making a fair amount of money for quite some time. I can't complain. I'm not broke. But I've lacked that consistency and focus in who I wanted to be, both personally and professionally. And I finally feel like I have figured that out, and I'm making significant progress with that.
Yes. I mean, we like it when people give us money, and sometimes other people ask us for money. And recently you decided to give somebody some money, and it didn't go too well. And while I didn't think it would be, make a lot of sense to make that the focus of our podcast, but I did think we could talk about it a bit. So in just a minute, we're going to come back and talk to you about how that went and what you learned from it. Right now, we need to take just a moment and give some attention to our sponsor. Today's Borderless podcast being brought to you by the Condescending Group, your loving spiritual guides into a nurturing world of kindness. The various members of the Condescending Group think there's just too much anger, aggression, and ugliness in the world, and they wish they understood why so many are simply not as enlightened as they are. All of those nasty, offensive behaviors, they say, stem from unresolved childhood issues and are ultimately indicative of unnecessary fears. So the Condescending Group reminds you to turn that frown upside down and embrace every living organism with a warm smile that radiates benevolence. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't heard, Judge Antonin Scalia died, and in celebration, some of the Condescending Group folks are planning a road trip to his burial site where they can all dance and piss on his grave. They're only sorry they won't be able to eviscerate or machete him to pieces while still alive. Go to thecondescendinggroup.com now and leave a message on the Scalia blog post if you have any kind of vehicle, because none of them do. The Condescending Group, they care more than you. Okay, we're back to the Borderless podcast, talking again with our guest, Gregory Diehl, who recently, as we mentioned earlier, had a very bad experience. And it had to do with a certain service provider. And he wrote an article that appeared in the Borderless blog recently. And James, did you want to talk about this? You kind of looked into this with Gregory, didn't you?
Well, yeah, as a member of the society with us, Borderless Society, we we have our mastermind calls, and he mentioned that he was having some troubles with someone, and he knows all the details of the situation, but then we have this post that we've put out to try to let others know, avoid this type of thing in the future for other people, and also how he was able to spin that around and make it into a positive thing for his upcoming book. So what do you think, Greg? Out of the things that you wrote about, what do you think the main takeaways are for people to learn so that they can learn from the mistakes and what you're not doing with the book?
Well, this is a situation that really just kind of struck me to my core, a really deep hurt and offense. Because when I first realized that I had the power to just make money however I wanted, if I could just convince people to give me money, I always had a way to make money. I realized that's a lot of responsibility, because if you're good enough at convincing people to give you money, it means you could very easily move into a moral territory and just start ripping people off, become a con man, because you're so convincing at whatever your sales pitch, whatever your spiel is, that I could be taking hundreds or thousands of dollars from people and then never do what they actually pay me to do, or do a very poor job of it, and essentially rip people off. And so I had to decide for myself very early on that I was always going to be an ethical business person and that I was only going to make agreements that I was 100% sure I was going to keep. And in the extremely unlikely event that I could not keep them, I would do everything in my power to make restitution, which usually meant a refund, if not more. And in my naivety, as I've developed this sort of personal code of business ethics for myself, I've realized not everyone else has that same sense of ethics and obligation to the people that they work with. And so about a year ago, I began speaking with a woman named Shola Abidoy, who originally I'd contacted her to help me set up some webinars for the business I was running. And she propositioned to me the idea that I should be putting out a book to establish myself as an authority on the niche of brand identity and brand development. And at the time, this wasn't something I had seriously considered. I mean, I've always thought about the concept of writing a book because I like to write and I've got a lot to say, but I had not taken the steps I needed to figure out exactly what I would have to do to make that happen. So suddenly here's this woman who appears very helpful, very knowledgeable, and an excellent saleswoman, telling me that for just $5,000, she would be able to help me both create the book and publish it and then market it to a point where it became a bestseller on Amazon. Like just a, complete done for you package where suddenly within a matter of a few months, I would be considered an expert author on a subject that I was working really hard to develop my skills and my reputation in. And so this sounded like a really attractive offer to me. And $5,000 at the time was not an enormous amount of money to me, but it was still the most amount of money I'd ever spent on my own brand. My own invested in myself, because I never would have felt confident enough to invest because I didn't know where the money was going. I didn't know what direction I needed to be moving in. So this was sort of a big deal to me when I suddenly decided, okay, here's this woman. We have a lot of mutual connections. We met through the Dynamite Circle, Dan Andrews' group. She really seems like she knows what she's doing. She's certainly achieved a lot more professional success in her life than I have. And when she tells me that she can help me get to that level just for a $5,000 investment that in any case should return on me in the form of new business anyway once the business is launched, I mean, it seemed like a no-brainer to me that this is the kind of direction I needed to be moving in. And it all would have been wonderful if that had been true and she were actually someone who had experience writing and publishing and marketing books, which unfortunately I found out several months after I paid her that was not the case. And she essentially just fed me enough information about the process of creating the book to make me think that the work was being done, because at some point in the process, she had decided that she no longer wanted to do this. And instead of refunding my money like I would have done if I were in that position, or what I consider an ethical business person would have done, I was left out to dry. And by the time I realized my mistake and that this woman had no intention of actually producing the work that I paid her for, it was too late to get my money back, which is paid through PayPal, and they have a 6-month limit on disputes.
That was the thing that I was trying to get to here. She was able to drag this past the 6-month mark when she knew you couldn't get your money back.
Right. It was like she intentionally waited until 6 months had passed to finally make that admission to me, like, sorry, I screwed up, like I shouldn't have taken your money. But at that point, I'm pretty sure she knew that there was nothing I could do to get it back.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that we've been able to help you, get a platform to get this story out there. That was one of the main reasons that I started Borderless, is because in the area of entrepreneurship, online income, offshore investments, all this type of stuff, there's so many people out there that are giving not right or outright lying advice, very bad, information coming out. And so, I'd like to put all this kind of thing out there and leave it to public scrutiny. And, if somebody else has something that, they think that we're not right about, then please come forward and let us know. But I definitely don't want to see people that are, especially in the membership site we have and other friends of ours and listeners, and to be, ripped off or something and then not do anything. I feel like we have a duty to bring these things to light. But, I think the good part is that you've taken this and you have now moved on and you're about to release this book. So maybe we could talk a little bit more about the book and how that's going for you.
The The book is going extremely well. As I said, it's in the final editing stages, and I do have a pre-launch campaign going on a sort of a crowdfunding platforms for books called Publishizer, which I've found to be a very interesting platform where people can go and pre-order the book, basically pay 5 or 10 or 15 or whatever tier they want to basically reserve their copy of the book or the audiobook version or the ebook version or multiple copies or a few other higher tier rewards I have, like helping them with their business. And so that helps me secure enough sales ahead of time that I can make this a successful bestseller, and also gives me the funds I need to cover any other expenses I have in completing the book.
Great. Awesome. Excellent. And I'm looking at it. It's a crowdfunding kind of a thing here. You have many different options ranging from, I think, $5 all the way up to $5,000 that people can get involved in if they want to be your platinum sponsor. I know that extra $5,000 would come in handy if anyone would come in handy.
Sure, I could use $5,000. Why not?
Right. But, well, congratulations on the book. That's great. And, I think it's so important. I was, in my former life, I was in marketing, and branding was exactly what I tried to help small and mid-sized businesses do. And, but the way you talk about this so fully as being not so important for businesses, but also for individuals themselves and for yourself. You went through a bad experience and you've learned from it, and it's helping you further hone the point that you want to send out to the world. Isn't that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And that's certainly a core part of my values that define how I live as an individual and the work I do as a professional, that any experience can be turned into something that you can learn from and you can grow from, you can extract new principles for living from. If you just know how to manage pain, you know how to manage anger and any of the negative emotions that might come from any bad experience, and essentially turn them into stronger character.
Mm-hmm. All right, very good. So you're in Georgia now, Gregory. Sorry, Gregory. You're in Georgia now,
yes.
And so you're going to go through a process that can take up to 5 years, and at the end of which you may just be a citizen, right?
That is the idea. I currently have my residency here, and I certainly plan to spend at least a couple months out of the year here, hopefully during this summer when the weather is best. And they have a naturalization timeline of 5 years where you can get your Georgian citizenship, and it's extremely easy, efficient process. This is the only country in the world I've ever been to where you walk into the government building, get in a line, get your paper stamped and documented and signed, and pay your fees and walk out minutes later, with only having to go to a couple different desks instead of running all around town and waiting weeks for delays. And I mean, the bureaucratic nonsense has been cut down to a minimum here, which to me, again, is also an indicator of they're doing something right here.
Beautiful.
Georgian citizenship to me is a very alluring prospect. I really like the idea of it. I know they sort of assess it on a case-by-case basis. Some people invest in property or do other things. And I even heard cases of guys getting it in as little as 1 year because they had the right set of circumstances and bought some property and spent some time here, really planted some flags. But it's the kind of thing that I would certainly, if somebody's looking to get involved in Eastern Europe and are looking for unconventional places to establish residency or set up a life, I'd be happy to give them more advice, more info if they want to reach out to me, because I know not a lot of people are talking about Georgia.
Right. Now here's what I wanted to ask you. What is let's say you establish residency there. Is it difficult to do during the time you're waiting to be considered for citizenship or to apply for citizenship? Do you have to remain there? What are the rules on that? Do you know?
Residency is extremely easy to get. I think now you can get it in just one visit. If you spent probably 5 business days here, you could probably get residency, though I'm not sure exactly. There are no official rules for how long you're supposed to stay on the ground in Georgia. I believe I'm staying here voluntarily because I find it a good place to hang out and work and meet people. But I don't believe a lot of countries to maintain your residency, even Ecuador, for example, I can qualify for residency there because I own land, but they have a requirement of spending 9 months out of each year of the first 3 years there. And I'm not prepared to do that yet. That's why I haven't tried to acquire Ecuadorian residency. Georgia does not require you to do that, as far as I know. I mean, they say that it helps if you do, It certainly makes your case look better, but there is no strict requirement on how many days out of the year you're supposed to spend here. You do need to start a company here, which is extremely easy to do. You do need to open a bank account and deposit about $3,000 in there, at least temporarily. But all these things are extremely easy and extremely cheap to do.
Excellent.
That's really cool. I'm looking forward to talking to you as these things unfold, not just to see how your Georgian residency and citizenship go, but also this book. I want to see how that does affect your your marketing and all that type of stuff. I know there's a lot of different ways that people go at marketing, and I think that certainly the book market is changing drastically. And so I've thought in the past about doing different books. We've had a lot of people on the podcast that have written books, and some people that help others publish their own books. So I think it's interesting, and I'd like to see how that works out for you. And are you looking to make money off the book itself? Or are you looking at it more as kind of something just to build up your marketing, maybe as kind of like a more lengthy business card or something like that?
Well, I'm never opposed to making money. With that in mind, though, I am certainly not starving for cash. And the main purpose for me has, I'm not looking at as a get rich quick scheme. I mean, if it takes off and becomes a viral sensation, I certainly won't say no. But to me, it's more just about really establishing myself in a documented, published way of this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I have to say, and I think you can gain something from it. It certainly works as a glorified business card as well. I can tell people once it's out, I'm Gregory Diehl. I wrote the book on that. You should look me up.
Right.
So there's that appeal to it, and I think I will certainly, in the long run, see enough of a return for the amount of time and effort and money I put into this that it will certainly help me grow myself professionally in the world. And it's not the last book I'd like to write. I've really gained a lot just from the process of writing it. I've got a few other already in mind that I'd like to write, both on the subject of personal lifestyle development and business.
Okay.
Great. Yeah. So why don't you let us know a little bit more? I mean, we mentioned your the website, which you're trying to concentrate on right now. If you don't mind just going a little bit, telling us more about that and what it is that you help people do.
Well, the website for the book pre-launch is brandidentitybreakthrough.com, the name of the book. But primarily I work out of my business consulting website, which is marketfit.net. And essentially what I help people do is, depending on where they are in their current business growth, so it could be a prospective entrepreneur who has a really good idea, but he really wants to approach putting it out into the world in the right way. Or it could be a very established business that realizes they need to rebrand, they really need to refocus what their business is about or how their communication affects their audience. I help them identify the core values that define their business, both as a personality and the unique problem they solve by existing, and the unique problems each of their products and services solve, the unique manner in which they solve them, and the unique kind of person they're trying to solve them for. And when you can take all of those elements together, you can start to sort of create a narrative, a story that establishes the company beyond just a logo or a name or a tagline or a generic website copy or an elevator pitch. And this has the benefits of, one, helping the people in the business understand who they are and what they're doing a lot better, which has all kinds of positive effects on their internal operations, whether they're a small team or a solo entrepreneur or many, many employees. And it completely changes, ultimately, every way that they communicate with the world externally. So that now when somebody reads something they have to say or listens to a video or something they put out, they instantly understand who these people are and what they stand for, and they can decide in a matter of moments whether or not these are the kind of people they want to work with, or whether or not this is the kind of product they want to buy. It's like qualifying sales instantaneously through the right kind of communication, which is something I developed naturally because I had to survive, and now I help other people do the same thing.
So, James, you have a question for Gregory?
Sure. If somebody else is thinking about starting a business, maybe having the digital nomad type lifestyle or something like similar to what you've done, what is the best piece of advice that you would give them?
The best piece of advice I would give you is you have to learn to ignore the many influences in your life that are telling you to be afraid of unconventionality and to take the path of least resistance of what everyone else is doing. You have to be bold enough to consider that just because something is not common or no one around you is showing you how to do it doesn't mean that it's impossible. And there probably are other people who have figured out how to do it. And if you look hard enough, you can find them and you can learn from them. But more importantly, if you're smart enough and resourceful enough, you can also figure these things out yourself through trial and error. The main thing is just being bold enough to try. And when you make a mistake, to learn from it as quickly as possible, adapt your strategy, and keep going. So that could be something as simple as being willing to buy the plane ticket and get on a plane to a foreign place, or it could be being bold enough to say, this is the service I want to offer to the world. This is who I am. I think it's worth this many thousands of dollars. Who's willing to pay me for it? That is a terrifying idea to most people. Not necessarily because they're afraid of speaking, but just because they're not confident in what they're doing. And so if you can develop that confidence, even if you fail, you will learn so quickly through that process of failure that you will become a success much sooner than you think is possible.
All right. Excellent advice. Thank you very much, Gregory Diehl, for being our guest this week on the Borderless Podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. So we finally had Gregory Diehl on the Borderless Podcast. He doesn't like the term digital nomad, but I kind of think of him as a kind of an obvious example of one, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people try to get away from the labels that they're given, but yeah, he's been living all over the world and he's found a way to make it work and make money doing it. So I thought he's a great example.
Absolute cyber hustler.
That's right.
So we do have a new review, I noticed. It's entitled Fresh New Thoughts. It says, Luke in Chile. Duh, who's that?
Yeah, Luke Crowley.
Luke Crowley. Thank you, Luke. He says, I love what James and John are doing. Keep the great content coming. So thank you very much for that rating and that review, Luke. And if you would like to leave us a review and a rating, we will be happy to read it on the Borderless Podcast. Just go over to iTunes. You should be able to figure out how to do that. I think it's kind of hard. I don't know if you can do it on your phone, so you kind of got to do it on a computer.
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
So, yeah, that's great. And, everybody, if you enjoy this type of content, this is the first time that you've heard the podcast, please go to borderlesspodcast.com. We have a bunch of blogs and podcasts on there, and you can get on the mailing list, and you'll also get there's a quiz on there, and it will tell you what's your ideal place to live, and that'll also get you on the mailing list. And we got a number of things, free things that we send out to people, so do that. And then if you want to join us, Luke Crowley and Gregory Diehl and you and I are both in, we have the Borderless Society, and we have a membership site where we talk to all our members on mastermind calls, and we have the forums and Facebook groups and a course that'll help you do all this type of stuff. So get you in touch with all the contacts you need in order to live a borderless lifestyle. So if you would like to do that, then please do join us.
And it's growing. I think the decision made to make it a lifetime subscription was probably a good one long term.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So, we would love to have you on there if you think that this is something that you'd be interested in. And so thanks for listening.
Yes, and another Borderless podcast will be coming up soon.
Thanks for joining us for the Borderless Podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders.